Welcome to the Danielle Robinson Podcast, where we examine culture, politics, and the psychology of being a woman in a world still deciding what that means. Today's episode is called From Suffrage to Selfhood. It's about how women's autonomy over our votes, our bodies, and our lives has never been a single battle won, but an unfinished project that each generation inherits and reshapes. The story of women's rights often begins with the ballot, but what those early suffragists truly fought for was recognition, the right to exist in public as citizens, not dependents. When New Zealand granted women the vote in 1893, it ignited a global movement. In Britain, suffragettes like Emmeline Pankhurst chained themselves to railings and went on hunger strikes. In the United States, figures such as Ida Wells and Susan Anthony marched for a democracy that had so far excluded half its population. But the right to vote was only the first layer of autonomy. Political equality didn't automatically translate into bodily freedom. Women could enter the polling booth, yet still not decide when or whether to have a child, how to earn an income, or how to live outside the shadow of male authority. By mid-century, the conversation deepened. In 1949, Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex posed a radical question: what makes a woman? Her answer, one is not born, but rather becomes a woman, dismantled centuries of biology as destiny. Beauvoir reframed feminism from a political campaign into a philosophical awakening. If suffrage claimed the public voice, her work reclaimed the private self, the intellect, the body, and the right to define womanhood beyond function. That intellectual revolution rippled into the sexual one. The 1960s birth control pill did more than prevent pregnancy. It decoupled sex from reproduction, pleasure from punishment. For the first time in history, millions of women could plan futures not dictated by biology. Then came 1973 and the landmark U.S. Supreme Court case Roe v. Wade. The court's decision recognized abortion as a constitutional right, an acknowledgement that privacy and autonomy were inseparable. For nearly 50 years, Roe stood as the legal embodiment of Beauvoir's philosophical one, until, of course, it didn't. The 2022 Dobbs v. Jackson ruling overturned Roe, not only rolling back reproductive rights, but reigniting the question at the heart of feminism's unfinished business. Who decides what happens inside the body of a woman, herself or everyone else? Each generation has imagined freedom differently. For suffragists, it was the vote. For second-wave feminists, control of fertility. For us, it's the broader, more complex question of sovereignty, how our bodies intersect with data, healthcare, law, and identity. Autonomy today means navigating a digital world that tracks menstrual cycles, a workforce that still penalizes motherhood, and a political system that recycles moral panic as policy. The battleground has changed shape, but not substance. I sometimes think of autonomy as a continuum, a thread stretched across a century from the streets of Seneca Falls to the coded walls of our apps. It isn't linear progress, it's cyclical persistence. Every gain meets its backlash. Every freedom requires renewal. And yet, that endurance, that refusal to vanish, is its own kind of victory. As philosopher Hannah Arendt wrote, power corresponds to the human ability not just to act, but to act in concert. Feminism, at its core, has always been that, concerted action. The collective insistence that the female body is not a metaphor or a battleground. It is a living, thinking citizen. So when we talk about the unfinished project of feminism, we're not lamenting incompleteness. We're recognizing continuity. Autonomy was never a moment in history. It's a muscle we keep strengthening. From the suffragists' banners to the marches in green scarves, from the philosophy of Beauvoir to the defiance of modern activists, the through line is clear. The freedom to choose is the foundation of every other freedom. And while laws can change, that idea, that conviction is irreversible. If this conversation resonated with you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss future episodes. Share this video with someone who still believes feminism is finished. And let's remind them that autonomy isn't a relic of the past, it's the project of the present. And if you'd like the full expanded version of this topic with deeper research, history, and personal reflections, listen to the Danielle Robinson Podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Because the fight for the vote gave us a voice, but the fight for the body is how we keep it.